Hello, it's Michele Vilsack, and you're listening to episode number 55, Stress Freedom. Welcome to the Cut the Stress Show, formerly the I Cut the Mustard Show, where you'll learn how to stop stressing, stop stress eating, and finally create the body that you can enjoy forever. If you're ready to lighten up, pun intended, then you're in the right place because you shouldn't have to hate creating the body that you love. Hello. I'm so excited about this episode because we're going to take a lot of concepts that we've talked about already and just put them together in a nice, neat way that I think is going to be so understandable and give you lots of ahas about stress management, about achieving your goals, and it is going to be fun. So I hope you're ready to roll like I am. And this is not a typical time. I usually record in the mornings because that's my time. But for some reason, it's like 10 o'clock when I'm starting all these recordings. But I just felt inspired. So here I am late at night doing this thing, which I usually don't do. But I'm that excited I can't even go to sleep. So let's talk about stress. I just love talking about it because I just think it's just a great umbrella term that I love to use and I want to clarify with you. But number one, I'm going to talk about how stress is a problem. And in the future, I really want to do a video about how stress is not a problem in lots of ways and that our body has so many it's great for our body to have stress, like when we're exercising, and there's so many great positive things about stress. But the type of stress that I'm talking about today is not good. And this is why. Because whenever I was struggling with all my digestive issues, I was doing all that I could with food. I was doing everything that I knew how to do with my diet, with exercise, with sleep, doing all the action things, but I wasn't paying attention to my emotions at all. So I was still struggling with digestive issues. And until I found out that stress was the problem, I kept being in this totally stuck place, in this loop where I couldn't heal myself. And this is absolutely true for most of us who are trying to lose weight and who are trying to create any healthy change in our life. Stress, as I define it, as I'm going to define it here in a second, is really the thing that keeps us from moving forward. It's the reason why we can't do the things that we know how to do. We all know that eating vegetables is great, and we know a lot of the healthy habits that we should have, but we just can't get ourselves to do it. And stress is why. So let's dive in and remind you a little bit about what is stress. Stress is the emotional and mental strain, and according to the dictionary, it's caused by our circumstances, right? But we define it here on Cut the Stress podcast as stress is the emotional and mental strain that's caused by repressing our emotions and ignoring our thoughts, right? Because stress is just like a buildup. It's the pressure that's going on inside our brain and our body from ignoring our thoughts, not looking through them, not processing them, letting them build up and go wild, right? And keeping our emotions inside, not processing our emotions, not letting our emotions flow through, but those emotions are getting stuck and they're building up. So that's how we define stress here on the podcast. And that happens not because we're having crazy circumstances around us. It's not because of the coronavirus. It's not because we're overweight. It's not because somebody in our family died or our car broke down or our refrigerator broke down, whatever. It's not those things. It's the fact that we're having thoughts and emotions about those things. And those thoughts and emotions are building up because we're ignoring them. We're not processing them. That is what's causing the stress. So that is what we are all about on Cut the Stress podcast. So the framework that I want to give you today is brand new. I've never explained it this way before, and I'm super excited to share it with you and launch my new program called the Stress Freedom Program, where you can find freedom from stress. So my new framework is the Freed method, FREED, and we're going to go through that method and how it helps you just knock out the stress, cut it down, and take control of your life. I'm so excited if you can't tell. Let's start with F, find the fun. F is find the fun. And most of you who've listened to me long enough know that I love to say stop doing what you don't want to do, right? Let's go out there and have fun. Let's stop shoving ourselves into these changes that we're trying to make and find the fun in it. So here I want to make the point that willpower just doesn't work. And I'm going to do some future episodes on these and really dive into them. But willpower doesn't work because we're shoving ourselves into it. We're trying to make ourselves do something that we don't want to do. It's not fun. There's lots of resistance there. And we're fighting against ourselves, so we're always going to lose. And so that's why I always say, stop doing stuff that you don't want to do. Find the fun. Get yourself to a place where you want to do it, where it's exciting, where you're energized. And then it becomes part of who you are. So if it's fun to do, if you're excited about losing weight, if you're excited about eating healthy, then you're going to do it, right? Like, wouldn't it be great if it was a game? And that is how we make these happen, my friends. So the number one rule is to have fun. Find the fun. So R is recognize thoughts. So remember, we said stress is that mental and emotional strain, that pressure that comes from ignoring our thoughts and then repressing our emotions. So the R is, first we need to recognize those thoughts. What is even going on in our brain? Most of us don't even know until you come to this work and learn more about thought work. Then most of us kind of ignore our thoughts. We don't dive into them. We don't create the skill of listening to our thoughts. We just kind of let them run wild in there. And whenever you first get started trying to figure out what's going on in there, it can be a little tricky because it's like a muscle that you're building. It's pretty weak. You don't really know how to do it. But I want to reassure you that it's absolutely worth it. Just keep trying to observe your thoughts, keep writing them down, observe them without judgment, and see what's going on in there so that you'll know how to fix it, right? First, we've got to recognize what our problems are or what patterns we've got going on in our head so that we know how to change them. And that brings me to E. So F is find the fun, R, recognize thoughts, E is edit your beliefs. So whenever we're new to thought work and starting to understand this process, we recognize our thoughts and we immediately want to change them. We want to edit them and start thinking only positive thoughts all the time and get rid of all of our negativity so that we can be happy all the time, which is a really great part of the process. I wouldn't say that it's the ultimate goal to just be happy all the time, but in our personal journeys, this is a really great place to start. So we started to recognize some of the thoughts that are going on in our head. And now we want to do something about it. We want to change those thoughts so that we can then change our results in the world. So I'm going to finish taking you through this framework, and then I'll give you an example of a stressful situation and then take you through the framework that way so you really get it. So edit your beliefs. And then the fourth thing is embrace emotions. So after we kind of get past wanting to change all of our thoughts all the time, we start to realize that emotions are a big deal too. And emotions are caused by all those thoughts that we're having. Sometimes they feel like they're just so automatic that we can't control them, but which is sort of true sometimes, right? But as we continue on our journey, we realize that we can embrace those emotions. We can enjoy the good ones and embrace them and feel the good emotions. We can feel the bad emotions and welcome them into our life, and they begin to not have power over us. So many of our problems come because we're trying to avoid our emotions or run away from them or pushing them down, and we feel like we shouldn't feel that way or we shouldn't think that thing, right? That's where all that stress is coming from. So we're pushing those emotions down. And as you move through this process of personal growth, you're going to start embracing those emotions and loving yourself no matter what emotion you're feeling. And you begin to move through life and just let those emotions come with you rather than judging them and feeling like they shouldn't be there with you in the journey. And then the last one, D, is to define your support. And again, we're going to talk about more of these in future episodes, but so far we've talked a lot about some internal things that you are doing. And I find that you have all the power over your life, right? That's really important to understand. So far, we've talked about all the things that you can do inside your own brain to take your power back and to change your life by finding the fun, recognizing your thoughts, changing those thoughts, and embracing the emotions. But the good news is that we don't exist in a vacuum. And one of the coolest hacks that I love to share with people is that we're so interconnected that we can kind of use other people to help us move through this process a lot more quickly than we can by ourselves. And I like to give the example of just like if you have a friend who you hang out with all the time, then you start to talk like them, you start to think like them, you start to do the things that they're doing. And one day you show up and you're wearing the same clothes, right? And you didn't even plan it because you're just on the same wavelength. I love it when that happens. So fun. So it's kind of like osmosis, that we're just so interconnected with one another that we really draw from each other and become like each other, which can be really hard if you're spending a lot of time with someone that you don't want to be or people who you feel like drag you down. But the cool thing is that you can start surrounding yourself with people who are like the version of you that you want to become. And whenever I take people through my coaching program, we often, at the very beginning of the program, we define who's the new you. What is the new you like? And this is the you right now. And then that's the new you. And after we define the new you, we're kind of talk about how do you hang out with people who are new, who are like the new version that you're trying to become. So just like hanging out with your friends and starting to talk like them and look like them and act like them, you pick people who are like who you want to be and you start hanging out with them. So if I want to run a marathon, then I go and I hang out with marathon runners because they're going to talk a certain way. They're going to tie their shoes a certain way. Like they're going to drink a certain kind of water. They're going to have some tricks that I just never really thought of. But more than that, as I hang out with them, they'll all be saying stuff like, oh yeah, running a marathon's no problem, or this is my 90th marathon, And so a lot of the beliefs, the limiting beliefs that I have that I don't know I have, they're just going to plow through those because I might be going into it thinking, man, it's impossible to run a marathon. That sounds so hard. That's terrible. But as I hang out with these marathon runners who ran 100 marathons, then I start to believe, oh yeah, obviously it's possible. If they can run 100, I can run one, right? So there's 1,000 little things that they do that you wouldn't have picked up on if you were just like studying about marathon runners. By hanging out with someone who's in that position, you're picking up on 1,000 little nuances, like I said, like osmosis. And because of that, you can find the fun, you can recognize their thoughts and start editing your beliefs without even really working on it. So that's the cool thing. So I love define your support because like I said, it's just like osmosis. It makes it so much easier to move forward and to make progress on your goal without even thinking, right? We want to minimize effort as much as possible, and this is the way to do it. So that's why I offer a daily email to my email list. That's why I do this podcast. And that's why I listen to a lot of podcasts myself, because I want to listen to people who are already where I want to be. And that's also why coaching is so powerful, because you're not just listening to me talk and give you the tools and try to do this work on your own. You're also hanging out with me in a much deeper, more intimate setting. And because of that, again, it's like osmosis. You're picking up on all the little pieces, things that you wouldn't necessarily pick up on if you were just listening to me through the microphone like this. So that is why that support is so important. And that's what I mean by support. So if you want that kind of support, I've got the stress freedom program that I just created, and I'll give you the link here at the end of the podcast, or you can find it in the show notes as well if you want to apply for that or chat with me about joining that program. But I told you that I promised that I would share an example and take you through this framework so that you can get a better understanding about what I even mean. In future episodes, I'm going to give you lots of examples about weight loss and struggling with stress eating and how that works with this process. So for this episode, I'm just going to give you a simple example from my life that I had recently, and that is finances. My husband and I, every month, we have a process. We have a big spreadsheet and we go through our expenses and, check out the credit cards and make sure that there wasn't any fraudulent charges. And we kind of look at our budget and make sure that we're not going too far off budget and just kind of review all of our finances. So it's about once a month. But recently, I've really begun to resent this process. I feel like it's a waste of my time. It takes too long. Normally, I sit down and I'm not really a procrastinator. I feel like I'm pretty focused. But when it comes to finances, it takes me a good 45 minutes or an hour to get ready and finally dive into actually doing it. And then it feels like it takes forever. By the end, my eyeballs just are red and bloodshot. I just feel absolutely exhausted and I just don't like it. So about a week ago, I sat down again to do our finances, review them, and I thought, okay, let me see if I can just find the fun. Let me just take a minute. I've already procrastinated about 20 minutes now, and I know it's going to take me another 20 minutes to get started anyway. So let me just take a minute and do this work that I'm always telling everyone else to do. So I thought about, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? Let me see if I can find the fun in finances. And so I thought about that. Why might I want to do this? And I tried to find the fun. And at the time, I couldn't really find a whole lot that sounded fun. But I got a little bit more motivation about why I might want to do it because it's valuable for my family. So I felt good enough to move forward, and I went forward. And so I was looking for the fun. So R would be to recognize my thoughts. So as I was moving forward, I started to ask myself, why do I hate this so much? What is wrong? Why is it so hard for me? And I realized it's because whenever I go in to do my finances, I'm having such terrible thoughts about myself and judgments about myself and how I spent the money and everything's so expensive. I'm thinking thoughts like, oh, it's never enough. I'm always overspending. I can never keep with the budget. I shouldn't have bought that. And then I'm thinking of all the judgments that maybe my husband has about me. What is he thinking about what I spent money on? And all of that stuff. So it would make a lot of sense that I hate it because I'm just beating myself up the whole time I'm there doing my finances. So I tried to find the fun. I recognized my thoughts and I decided I needed to edit my beliefs, edit my thoughts about this. So instead, I just started questioning those thoughts. Okay, maybe I didn't spend too much money. Like maybe I'm doing just fine. Maybe this is what I'm supposed to spend money on. Maybe we make money so that we can spend it, so that we can live our lives or whatever. I can't remember all the thoughts that I was having, but I started to shift my thinking. And instead of just letting it run in the background, ignoring it as I usually do, and just letting it play its course, I started to introduce some other thoughts into my brain as I moved on. And the cool thing was that as I moved forward, I was able to find the fun as I moved into it. And instead of being angry at myself for what I had spent the money on and spending too much, I started to say, man, this is a perfect opportunity as I review my expenses to think of all the fun things that I did with the money. So we had gone on our anniversary trip. So I saw all of the anniversary trip expenses there and the fun things that we went. We did zip lining. We did this little racing course thing. And I thought, oh, you know what? This is really fun. And remember that time we ate out, and remember when we went to Walmart and we bought that thing, So instead of being this torturous thing, it was actually fun to think about and review all the fun things that we did instead of beating myself up about it. So E is embrace the emotions. So throughout this process, I'm so proud of myself. It's not always this way, by the way, but this was just, everything was working perfectly and I was doing my work and it was changing my life that day. So I was embracing my emotions. And lately I really love to do tapping, emotional freedom tapping, to embrace my emotions. For me, I found that that's helped a lot. And again, if you're in the Stress Free program, I can take you through and show you how to do it. But so I just started tapping through some of those emotions and letting myself feel them. I also told myself, yeah, of course I'm feeling this way. No wonder, right? I just accepted and embraced those emotions. No wonder I feel terrible. No wonder I hate this. I'm beating myself up all the time, right? So I understood that as well as I was moving forward. And then again, defining my support doesn't necessarily apply to this specifically, but just in general, I like to surround myself with podcasts and people who are successful and who are making a lot of money, because I want to learn what their money mindset is. How did they think about it? And what relationship do they have with money, so that I can start having that relationship. But so that one's just an overall thing that we're doing all the time. So that's how it works in a real life situation. So by the end of the finances that day, it was actually a really cool experience for me. By the end of the finances, I was actually still peppy, and it really took probably half of the time that it usually takes me. I just was able to zip right through it. It was amazing. And again, I had some fun while I was doing it, remembering the fun things that we did with the money that we had and just feeling gratitude for the money. And I wasn't angry or bitter at my husband for not doing the finances. And I just had energy. I was able to move forward with the rest of my life. And I was also just really proud of myself as well for taking the time to stop and to de-stress in that way, to stop, to find the fun, to release that mental and emotional strain by recognizing my thoughts, editing my beliefs, embracing my emotions, and then continuing to define my support and find that support around me. So this is the Freed Method. I'm so excited to share with you in future episodes. If you're ready to jump in and work with me one-on-one, then check out the show notes for the link to my application. I'm currently accepting new applicants into the program. It's a 12-week program, and you can find all the details in the show notes there. All right, we'll see you next week. Are you ready to lose weight, take control of food, and create the body and life of your dreams? Then it's time to check out my Stress Freedom Program. In this 12-week program, you'll find the confidence, tools, and support you need to finally get the results you've been looking for. Check it out at coaching.michellevilsek.com.